President Buhari heads to Japan to participate in the 7th Tokyo International Conference on African Development.
Roles of Chief of Staff to the President and Secretary to the Government of the Federation have not changed, says Presidency.
Federal government to investigate and seek justice for Nigerian killed in Ukraine.
On Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall focus on agenda setting for the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning.
A new federal cabinet is now in place, as inaugurated by President Muhammadu Buhari last week, Wednesday. Now, the new cabinet comprises 43 ministers who will execute the next-level agenda. Some are hitting the ground running already, as expected, while others are studying the briefs and handover notes to know the mandate or appreciate the mandate of their ministries.
That's true, Kirian. Now, recall that 14 ministers who worked on the first term of President Buhari are back in the expanded Federal Executive Council. Now, 12 of the reappointed ministers retained their previous portfolios. We're talking about ministers such as Engineer Suleiman Adamu, who is back to water resources, Adamu, who's been retained as Education Minister, and Bonaya Ono, who is back as Minister of Science and Technology. Plus, of course, Muhammad Musa Bello, who is the FCT Minister, among others. Now, expectedly, the reappointed ministers would have picked up from where they stopped.
Yes, to say the least, Kinsley. Now, the next-level government of President Muhammadu Buhari is expected to consolidate on the successes of the last 4 years and deliver to Nigerians more dividends of democracy in the final lap of his administration.
Well, there are critical areas, Kirian, and today we are taking on the economy. As coordinated by the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, that's Zainab Ahmed, who now has the budget and national planning under her purview. And of course, in trying to coordinate the economy, we are sure that there will be a number of issues that she will be taking cognizance of going forward. And those issues, of course, include synergy in fiscal and monetary policies, plus Nigeria's revenue profile, not to forget also the country's growing debt profile as well, irregular budgetary cycles, and how to more effectively consolidate the gains of the first term of President Muhammadu Buhari.
I quite agree with you, Kinsley, that the task of taking the economy to the next level is daunting. But apparently, the Buhari administration has put parameters in place, such as the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, which seeks to diversify the economy, consolidate economic growth, create jobs, develop human capital, and bridge infrastructural deficit.
Of course, Kirian, there is also the Ease of Doing Business initiative, which seeks to reform the business environment with a view to attracting more foreign direct investment, as well as reducing the challenges faced by MSMEs in accessing credit, paying taxes, or moving their goods from one point to the other in the country.
Also, the administration has re-emphasized the restriction of official foreign exchange for food imports to discourage importers and encourage local food production and manufacturing.
But our revenues are still largely dependent on crude oil sales, which of course is subject to a lot of local and international vagaries, thereby giving rise to the clamor for economic diversification, which many experts agree is certainly the way to go, especially using agriculture, in which Nigeria has an overwhelming comparative advantage.
Exactly. Nigerians are yearning for the revival of the textile industry, for instance, as well as manufacturing and industrial hubs, which have potential for ripple effect and jobs and wealth creation as well. So what is the economic roadmap for the next 4 years, and what are the low-hanging fruits for the economy? What is the plan to have an industrial-driven economy that will generate the much-needed jobs and create wealth for Nigerians? How can we achieve regular budget cycles and further bridge the infrastructural deficit?
Well, those are very pertinent issues you have raised there. We shall, of course, raise these same issues with the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, as well as other guests who will be with us this morning in our conversation segment. It's on that note, we'd like to thank you for being with us on today's edition of Good Morning Nigeria. It's always our pleasure to have you with us as we broadcast live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We're Africa's largest TV network. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I am Nigerian. Thank you for being here with us this morning. And of course, as Kingsley said, we are live here in Abuja. And as always, we have a part of the program, which of course will include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and others. The morning news right now is with Nolene Abel Ame. Nolene, good morning.
Good morning, Kirian and Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria. Here is the early morning news. President Muhammadu Buhari has departed Abuja for Japan and will arrive later today to participate in the 7th Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD, from August 28th to 30th, 2019. President Buhari is accompanied by Governor Babagana Zulum of Borno, Abdurrahman Abdurazak of Kwara, and Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State, as well as ministers and other top government officials, with the theme Africa and Yokohama, sharing passion for the future. President Buhari will deliver Nigeria's statement during plenary session 3, in which he will appraise Nigeria-Japan relations and takeaways from TICAD 6. The president will also attend other major and side events in Japan and hold a bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. He will also meet chief executive officers of some Japanese companies with huge investments in Nigeria. The presidency has debunked recent media and social media reports on change in the responsibilities of the Chief of Staff to the President. A statement by Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, notes that the role of Chief of Staff remains the same as it was in the first term of the President. The Chief of Staff is to act as the head of the presidential administration at Asorok, an advisor to the President on any and all matters, and the line manager for all staff at Asorok. He is also to manage appointments and scheduling for the President. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, SGF, on the other hand, is responsible for ensuring the effective coordination and monitoring of implementation of government policies and programs, and all cabinet matters must go through him. The statement stresses that access to the President is open to ministers, and it is not true that this is denied them in the second term. Funding support to boost agricultural activities in Nasarawa State is getting more attention from the federal government under Nigeria Incentives Risk-Sharing Agricultural Lending of the Central Bank of Nigeria.
See the opportunities in Nasarawa State, match it with our TTMPs, tools, techniques, methodologies, and processes, and see how we can put them together and come up with a working and implementable document that will redefine agribusiness in the state.
We want to keep our youth active. We want to keep them in business so that they can remain in business, so they have something to do, so they have income, so they have independence.
Plateau State Governor Simon Bako Lalong says the state is seeking a 30 million naira bond to enable it to implement its legacy projects that touch all critical sectors of the state's economy. Governor Lalong, who met with stakeholders from the state and private sector on the funding of the legacy projects, said his determination to leave a lasting legacy in the state remains unshaken. Accountant General of the state, Cyril Signal, explains the rationale behind the bond.
Remember, this lifespan of this government will expire in 2023, and it needs to complete some of these projects. So we are discussing with people, investors that will come in and be able to complete some of these major projects.
The Nigerians in Diaspora Commission is working with relevant bodies to unravel the cause of the death of a Nigerian in Ukraine. Chairman, Chief Executive Officers of the Commission, Abike Dabrerewa, while commiserating with the family of the deceased in Lagos, gave assurance of justice.
And you want to know that your son got justice in death. And that's why we all have to ensure that we keep it's going to take a while, but I'm going to keep at it. You know I will not stop.
Nigeria and the 14 other economic communities of West African states, ECOWAS, have set a target to eradicate rabies in the region by 2023. This, they say, will be achieved through massive campaign for dogs vaccination and control of stray dogs.
This figure is for sure underestimated. There are many places in the world, in Africa, in Asia, where the diagnostic of rabies is not done. So the people who die because of rabies.
It will be shameful if we are unable to take the rightful steps to be there by 2030, that we will be fit. We will have created an enabling environment for total elimination of rabies.
On security, men of the 23 Brigades Nigerian Army Yola have intercepted and handed over to the Nigeria Customs Service 6 mines-resistant vehicles in Konkol, a Nigeria-Cameroon border village. Mohammed Saidu reports that the vehicles are being suspected to have been transported into Nigeria without due process. The Akanu Ibiam International Airport, Enugu, has been closed indefinitely by the Federal Aviation Authority of Nigeria. This is to enable government rehabilitate the deplorable runway of the airport and address other threats to safety of passengers and other users of the airport.
Those in authority should do everything possible to make sure that even if it's shut down now, that it should come back within a short space of time.
So we are looking forward, very optimistic, looking forward that something reasonable comes out of this.
The news that the Enugu airport is going to be shut down, it's a welcome development. It's an opportunity for us to get it repaired once and for all.
President Muhammadu Buhari, on behalf of the Federal Executive Council, congratulates the Sultan of Sokoto, His Eminence Muhammad Saad Abubakar III, on his 63rd birthday anniversary. In a statement from the Senior Special Assistant to the President, Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu says the President applauds the Sultan's exemplary roles and contributions towards building peaceful, secure and prosperous country. The President values the timely counsel and support of the royal father to the administration's policies and programs, has commended Sultan for championing, among other things, poverty reduction and education for the most vulnerable. That's the news for now. Good morning, Nigeria continues with Kingsley and Kirian after this break. Thank you for watching.
Igboro na sharp guy, Igboro na wise guy, Igboro they code everybody, Igboro they feel funky. Igboro na smart guy, anywhere he they go he they shine eye. Igboro no they slago, Igboro is very connected. Igboro they judge everybody, and they know they trust anybody. Igboro they look everybody like say them is suspect. Nobody wanna trust nobody, but everybody.
Don't be like him. Free your mind with Airtel Smart Talk and enjoy calls to all networks at a flat rate of 11 kobo per second. 7 naira fee on the first call of the day applies. Dial *315# to join.
Airtel, the smartphone network.
Helen!
Hey, where's your mom?
Today is her toilet day.
What? Helen!
Toilet Day. Tomorrow you're hosting a party and it's a matter of my reputation. Even if you spend your entire day cleaning with all this, it still won't be party ready. Impossible. Challenge. New Ticker Harpic 10X. Even if you use this solution 10 times, it won't give you the same cleaning like Harpic. Its new Ticker formulation sticks to the bowl better, removes old stains, and gives you a sparkling clean toilet. Wow! New Harpic 10X gives me the freedom from Toilet Day. New Harpic 10X for 10 times better cleaning.
You're still watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Now, unclaimed dividends on the capital market are in focus as figures begin to drop. And details of the story with Water Nigeria correspondent.
The huge figures emanating from unclaimed dividends in the capital market have started on a downward trajectory following the announcement by the Securities and Exchange Commission that considerable progress has been made in the implementation of its consolidation of multiple shareholder accounts and electronic dividends mandate management system. As a result, about 3.4 billion shares has been consolidated. The Commission pointed out that both measures were introduced as part of checking the growth and possibly eliminating the unclaimed dividend menace in the nation's capital market. The Acting Director General, SEC, Ms. Mary Uduk, who made the announcement at the end of the second quarter Capital Market Committee meeting, said a total of 2.7 million shares account have so far been captured under the EDDMS and expressed satisfaction with the regularization of multiple shareholder accounts since it was launched last year, describing investor response as very impressive. Farmers in Nigeria are gearing up to bridge the gap expected to be created when the Central Bank of Nigeria fully implements its ban on FX for the importation of dairy products into the country. National President, All Farmers Association of Nigeria, Kabir Ibrahim, says it is in the best interest of farmers in Nigeria as it will pave way for a new phase in livestock farming in the country. The national president noted that the arrangement is in line with the federal government's livestock transformation plan under the office of the vice president.
When you produce milk as a dairy farmer, you are simply an outgrower. There are people now who will take from you, and then you get good money, and then also meat. Once you expose your cattle to particular types of recommended feed, they will produce milk and meat. And what CBN is doing is encouraging us to do something that is worthwhile. You know, make sure that you produce milk even in your backyard. If you have 5, 6 cows, there should be good milk there.
With Business News, I'm Chimubi Walter Naji.
And we thank you, Chimubi, for that business package. And up ahead on Good Morning Nigeria is newspaper review.
All right, newspaper reviewer Bayo Atoyebe is right here with us in the studios. Bayo, good morning and welcome.
Thank you, Kinsley. Good morning. Good morning, Kirian.
Yeah,
good morning,
Bayo,
Nigeria.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. This is Monday, and we have about 4 newspapers out this morning. And let's begin with the Daily Trust newspaper. The Daily Trust newspaper, below the nameplate, we have, I was shocked when my name was not included in ministerial list. That says the sheet is on page 14 of Daily Trust newspaper. Tributes as Professor Jibril Aminu clocks 80. Page 16 is where you get details of that. AFC approves $230 million loan for mobile. Well, that's on page 21. All right, now the lead story this morning. Army goes after traitors as Boko Haram strikes again. 9 abducted women return. That's a rider to that story. 12 still missing. And At the foot of the Daily Trust newspaper, there are a number of headlines there. Muslim community condemns demolition of Port Harcourt Mosque. It's on page 6. Kano governorship. Gamma results cancelled at Coalition Center. It's on page 15. Wamako set to establish private university in Sokoto State. Page 3 has details of that report. Kinsley.
Okay, well, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. Punch, above the nameplate, we have the following headlines. Bank's software investment rises by 55% to 120 billion naira. Taraba killings, army to court-martial soldiers in Jos. That's on page 2. On page 20, Nigeria and U.S. working to curb online fraud. That's attributed to the presidency. Zamfara, Oke's Ruga settlements for 17 councils. That's page 11. And then 2 earpieces beside the nameplate. JAM plans mobile course for exam fraudsters. And power generation falls to 2,970 megawatts on discourse demand. Now, lead story says $9.6 billion. British firm listing Nigeria assets for seizure. Little known firm may impound naval vessels and oil cargoes. That's to be found on page 2. And the photograph on the front page of the Punch newspaper there shows the president and 3 of the state governors who are accompanying him on the trip to Yokohama in Japan. The Borno state governor, the Kwara state governor, and the Lagos state governor with the president on the presidential aircraft. VATSA, 4th junior ministerial position for Niger. That's page 20. Gunmen open fire on Benue student leader, page 3. And world's smallest island nation's president loses election. That's page 8. And then right at the foot of the front page, Nigeria's leadership degenerating progressively. That's attributed to Peter Obi, most recently vice presidential candidate of the PDP. Flood washes away 3 Adamawa communities and local government farmlands, page 10. And Katsina raises out-of-school children's panel and gets $3 million grant. Details on page 11. Bayo.
Yes. Well, let's start with the concern that has been expressed by government. Those our fellow compatriots who are giving Nigerians a bad name. The concern actually is about 80 internet fraudsters who have been identified in the United States, and sadly, 77 of them are said to be Nigerians. It's not only there, about 21 persons who are said to be on death row in Malaysia, 22 of them are from Nigeria. In fact, 21 of them are from one specific state in Nigeria. Similarly, there are many, about 17, said to be on death row in Saudi Arabia. All of them are Nigerians. And the argument here is this: where you are a Nigerian and you are abroad, you are subject to the laws of the nations where you are. However, that is not enough to blacklist all the 200 million Nigerians as bad citizens. Granted that these our compatriots are giving us a bad name, the federal government says that those who are found to be guilty of the law should be prosecuted in their country. However, other Nigerians who are living and earning legitimate businesses should not be painted with such a brush.
It's true, Bayo, but if you look at it from another perspective, those countries, where many Nigerians are humiliated, may not be blamed totally, because yes, you cannot condemn the over 200 million people because of the few of us that are doing that. But of course, the preponderance of the involvement is another matter. That will, of course, any sensitive, security authorities anywhere in the world would say, look, you're from where? Nigeria. Please, I want to do a double check. Yes. I mean, for me, it's natural. I want to do a double check on you, right? So that's where they have put us into. That's the level they have put us into.
And reasons are not far-fetched. What happens now is that most of those who are involved in all this are young men who are looking for riches quickly.
Quickly, exactly.
They don't believe in hard work. They want quick riches, not minding how the riches come.
To come to
and
Nigeria.
the danger is here in our society. There is a tendency to encourage people towards gambling, depending on luck to get rich quick, depending on miracles to get rich quick, abandoning the essence of working hard to get rich. And that is the preponderance that you find among our youths now.
And this betting thing, I just came out from Enugu 2 days ago. I had a story of a guy that won 44 million. Now, he was only able to utilize about 5 million. Went back to betting again. and lost the remaining money in betting. So what's the...
Well, there are two issues here, Kira. A gambler is ultimately a loser.
Yes.
A gambler. Whatever you win along the way, you lose it in the long run once you take an aggregate of it. But for the scammers who are now being hounded by the FBI, some are already in the can, according to the various reports. One of the things that they have done, and they will continue to do, that's for those who are into Yahoo and other forms of scam, is that they make hard-working and law-abiding Nigerians look either foolish or underachieving. There is a video that's been circulating. You could see some of these young rascals, the way they were spraying notes. Spraying money. If you work hard for your money, you don't toss it around that way.
You can't spend it.
You don't toss it that way.
Yeah.
You know, and the other point is, we keep saying this, and we've said it here, you know, particularly for those who are in South Africa and elsewhere, but not say in the US. Don't think that some of the things you get away with at home, that you can get away with it when you're outside.
Exactly.
No matter how smart you think you are, the system you are trying to beat, was built by those persons, and so they know how to backtrack. It trades and trade transactions, and ultimately get you. It's not the first time they're reining in, fraudsters, but this would appear to be a huge haul for them. And we hope that, they put them in some, unfortunately, Alcatraz used to be one of the most feared prisons, if you like, in the U.S. Alcatraz has been closed. But sorry, I'll just say, I do hope that in the end they will get justice and that, they find the best treatment for themselves while they are put behind bars.
And from what Honorable Abike Hebere said, that they're going to hand over anybody that's implicated in that, to go and, of course, face justice.
Of course, everybody must face their music.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, the other concern...
There was that story you read, maybe we're going to discuss it. The former Minister of Communications said, I was shocked when my name was not included in ministerial list. Kirian read that. This is the first list now. Maybe the second batch will come or something.
Well, maybe from his own personal evaluation, he thought that he had performed well and he expected that he would be on the list. But the decision was not his.
Second batch.
but the blueprint, he says, my non-reappointment as minister, an act of God. So we don't know.
So he has eventually surrendered. But the other concern now is what the Attorney General of the Federation has expressed serious concern about. That is a company that is known as Process and Industrial Development Limited that is threatening to seize Nigeria assets because it has won arbitration to be awarded $9.6 billion as damages. This is sequel to an agreement that was entered in 2010 for which, according to the agreement, the company is alleging that Nigeria failed to meet its part. But the implication was that while Nigeria representative failed to build the pipeline to supply the gas agreement which they had, the company also failed to construct the plan for processing it. The agreement was actually for processing of Industrial Development Limited 400-meter gas for 20 years, and they were supposed to establish a plant to process them for lean gas and for which they are supposed to sell in Europe. And so they went to arbitration. Nigeria was represented. They had a party, and the third party was the arbitrator. And eventually, the arbitration awarded $6.56 billion as damages and also 7%, which totally brought it to $9.6 billion. The Attorney General of the Federation says we have a good case, and he's prepared to take it off. And not only that, those who were involved in the transaction as far back as 2010 up to date will be also brought to book.
Well, some of them are already beyond justice. I'm sure you're aware of that. Some of those persons, some of those who were involved in the initial agreement that was signed in 2010, Minister of Petroleum, for instance, Rewano Lokman, long since gone, Group Managing Director of NNPC, another one who was in charge of DPR, they're also gone. But clearly, this is a story that is going to run for a while. Yeah. And I'm sure that Kirian will have the opportunity of interrogating this. But what appears to stick out is the typical Nigerian tardiness in dealing with matters that ordinarily would have a huge cost for us, and that's what we're likely to see. Yeah. Kirian.
All right, now to the Blueprint newspaper. Let's take the Blueprint newspaper. There are very striking headlines here. On the right-hand side of the nameplate, flood sweeps away 200 houses, properties in Jigawa community. It's on page 5. Just below that, pipeline vandalism on the increase, says NMPC. It's on page 34. Now, below the nameplate, Zamfara monarch to northern governors adopt Metawale's approach to banditry. With the rider, state government mauls 500 housing units for Ruga. All right, gunmen attack, shoot Benue SUG president. That's a student union government president. It's on page 42. And the lead story here is a theater commander to troops. Let's wrap up the war and go home. With 3 riders, warns commanders against starving soldiers, debunks withdrawal of Gubio Magumeri, and Boko Haram burns 73 houses, 28 shops in Konduga. And of course, at the bottom of the blueprint, we have 70% cars on Nigerian roads are second-hand. Rewane, to page 34. Armed men in military uniform kidnapped 5 in Kaduna, says the police. It's on page 16. 26 U.S. universities teach Yoruba language. Alafi. It's on page 17 now. Nursing officer on a narco medical team dies in Mecca.
Okay, Kirian, we'll take the editorial now. It's coming from the Leadership newspaper, and it's at page 3. The title of the editorial is Public Officials and Assets Declaration. In part, the editorial reads, Makinde was sworn in as the executive governor of Oyo State in May this year. Now, his assets declaration is an open challenge to others in government, especially his fellow governors. The editorial adds that assets declaration on its own is not enough to check the excesses of government officials, their aides, government contractors, and even family members who are known to have become conduits through which public officials steal public resources should be brought under the searchlight too. It's therefore imperative that assets declaration processes be extended to those categories of persons around public officials, and this without prejudice to the provisions of the Constitution.
Can I quickly draw attention to this human interest story? If 14-year-old girl, daughter of a politician, was reported missing, the father reported her missing. So the police put a phone call to her number. It rang and later on became engaged. They traced and found the girl in Owerri. She has traveled from Enugu to Owerri to be with her boyfriend. They are students of a school in Abakaliki, and she says the holidays is too long and he's missing the boyfriend. That's why she ran away from home. Now talking about asset declaration. 14.
Yeah, well, it's an embarrassing
embarrassment.
In
fact, the father himself is embarrassed because she actually raised alarm that her daughter is probably kidnapped and is missing, only to find out that the girl had eloped.
And the father is one gentleman, like we've known over the years in Enugu, very gentle person.
Anyway, talking about asset declaration. Asset declaration is for public officers. And yes, the policy is that when you are a public officer, if you are a political appointee, the day you are appointed, before you assume office, you complete an asset declaration form. And at the end of your tenure, you also complete an asset declaration form. This will enable the public asset to evaluate your assets in consonance with what has been declared. But however, all public servants are required by law every 4 years to complete asset declaration form. What the editorial is suggesting is contractors or people who are close to public officers, particularly who are conduit for corruption. I don't know how that will be amenable to have them also complete assets declaration form, because assets declaration and the completion is purely meant for public officers.
Okay, Baya Toyobe, thank you for being around.
Thank you.
We'll see you again tomorrow. All right, it's Good Morning Nigeria, still on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we shall be looking at the agenda for the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning.
They are there at the crack of dawn. They are there busy preparing while we rise for our day. They are there silently, guarding, waiting, listening, and watching. They are there ready in the sky above and the waters below, in the blistering heat of the day, in the dead of night, willing, indefatigable, determined in the defense of the sovereignty of our country. They are our first line of defense and our last. They who have paid the ultimate price in defending us. They are fathers and uncles. They are mothers and sisters and girlfriends and boyfriends. They are brothers and cousins and best friends and neighbors. They are classmates, colleagues, and citizens of this nation. They are our defenders and deserve our respect, our prayers, our thoughts. Nigeria, please support our armed forces.
Mommy is ready to receive me a bundle of joy. Mommy is making my home cleaner and safer. We are Dettol sure. Daddy is home. He must be germ-free. He needs to be Dettol sure. My clothes are so nice. We are Dettol sure.
Illnesses can happen at home too. That's why Dettol and me together will make my baby's home safe and to protect from up to 100 illness-causing germs. That's why moms want to be Dettol. Dettol Sure.
We are Dettol Sure.
All right, if you are just joining us, this is Good Morning Nigeria on the NTA, Africa's largest TV network. And as part of our agenda setting series, we shall today discuss the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning. And of course, to set the tone for the conversation, here is our correspondent Leah Khartoum Babatunde with this report.
The Buhari administration, in its first tenure, had a daunting economic experience. It mounted the saddle in the wake of falling global oil prices that diminished earnings, and ultimately, Nigeria entered a recession in 2016. These get government taking effective steps to reflate the economy as Nigeria paid her way out of recession, returned to growth trajectory in 2017, and came up with the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, the ERGP. It's an ambitious medium-term plan designed to diversify the economy, restore economic growth, create jobs, empower the youths, develop the human capital and infrastructure, improve business environment, and bring about technological growth. Nigeria accounts for nearly 20% of Africa's GDP and about 75% of the West African economy. It is ranked as the 27th largest economy in the world in terms of nominal GDP and the 22nd largest in terms of purchasing power parity. However, oil revenues contribute to two-thirds of the nation's revenues, whereas oil alone contributes about 9% to the GDP. President Muhammadu Buhari has identified fighting corruption, increasing security, tackling unemployment, diversifying the economy, enhancing climate resilience, and boosting the living standards of Nigerians as main policy priorities his government seeks to continue to pursue in his second term up till 2023. Since Nigeria's emergence from recession, the World Bank observes growth was higher in 2018 at 1.9% and more broad-based. However, it still fell below the population growth rate, government projections, and pre-recession levels. Planning for the rapid population growth remains paramount for policymakers, and already government is insisting on attaining self-sufficiency on all fronts, and the services sector now accounts for about half of the nation's GDP. Though the industry sector is also gaining grounds, inadequate infrastructure, especially power, is limiting potentials of the sector. Also of concern is the continuous delay in the passage of annual budgets, exacerbated by heavy recurrent expenditure and the present decline in oil prices. The federal government has made strides with institutional and governance reforms, including implementation of the Integrated Finance Management and Information Systems and the Integrated Payroll and Personal Information System. The enactment of the Secure Transactions in Movable Assets Act 2017 has institutionalized and widened coverage of collateral to stimulate lending to small and medium enterprises.
All right. right, thank you very much, Leah Katumba Batunde, for that background. We have with us in the studios the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, that's Hajia Zainab Ahmed. Hajia Zainab, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning Nigeria again.
Good morning, thank you for having me.
And congratulations on your reappointment. We are seeing you for the first time since you were reappointed.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're also going to have later on in the course of the conversation two of the regular faces on Good Morning Nigeria, professors of economics. First, Ken Ife, who is a development economist. Professor Ken Ife, pleasure to have you with us again on the program.
Thank you very much.
And Professor Nazif Idama, who is a professor of economics at the University of Abuja. Professor Dama, pleasure to have you with us on the program.
Good morning, and good morning, Nigerians.
Yes, yeah, Kirian, I was just wondering, before we get into the nitty-gritty of financial and economic issues, the Honorable Minister, in the first term of President Buhari, served in what was then known as the Ministry of Budget and National Planning. And later she was moved to the Ministry of Finance, substantive minister, to which she's now been reappointed.
And actually, that's the area that we'd like her to start from.
Absolutely.
Now that the ministry has been expanded, I have Budget and National Planning, as well as the Ministry of Finance now into one. So these are now under your purview. Would you just let us know the import here and what are the advantages with respect to the issue of procedures and bottlenecks and challenges, or if you like, a bureaucracy that has to do with the process? Give us an idea of what it's going to be for you now, because for the many Nigerians is a big, a huge responsibility.
Well, thank you very much again for having me, and good morning, Nigerians. In the last dispensation, the President decided to have two separate ministries, Ministry of Budget and National Planning and Finance. The intention was to link budgets with plans, because in the past in the country we have had so many beautiful, wonderful plans, but somehow they were not being implemented. And to a large extent, the intention was partly achieved, but it was also problematic, because there was a challenge of the implementation of the budget, and there was this variances between what was priority as seen by the Ministry of Finance and what was priority as seen by the Ministry of Budget and National Plan. Now, of course, the Ministry of Finance is the Treasury, so it always had the way, because it was the one that was disbursing the funds. It created some significant strain, and the President decided to correct and revert back to bringing the budget office back to the Ministry of Finance, but also bringing the planning aspect together with the Ministry of Finance, so that we can still maintain that positive trend of linking budgets with plans. The mandate is a very, very wide one. The remit is wide. So we have already studied what we need to do, and in the process of charting out how things will work between the planning side and the finance side. And there's also a Minister of State that is responsible for supporting the ministry under the budget and planning aspect. So we have to work very, very closely together. But what is clear is that now the budget implementation will be done together. And also issues of tariff, as well as duties and waivers, that was also some subject of strain, can now be done seamlessly together. So my role is to make sure that the whole of these functions that are intertwined are well coordinated, and as much as possible there are no delays in implementation.
Well, that's what you have said. There is a presumption that there was obviously a review of what went on in the first term of Mr. President with regard to the operational efficiency of Ministry of Finance as Finance and then Ministry of Budget and National Planning. Now that you have a panoramic view of both fields now under one, what are your priority issues?
So our priorities will continue to be guided by the country's medium-term plan. The ERGP is still very much relevant today. And also at the tail end of the last administration, we had been tasked to provide a roadmap for the next administration. So we prepared a document that is that had assessed and audited government policies, programs, and projects, and then charted out what needs to happen in the next 4 years. Of course, the starting point was still the ERGP. So we did a quick midterm assessment of the ERGP, centered around the impact of the ERGP. The study was done with focus on impact of each of the policies on households. It helped us to chart out what we need to do. But it's still clear to us that the priorities still need to be agriculture and food security, power, including petroleum as well as oil and gas, manufacturing and small, medium enterprises. We also have alignment of monetary policy and fiscal policy. And each of these areas, nine areas, of course, including security, the fight against corruption, and then we added a special focus on housing and financing for SMEs. So each of these areas have specific targets and deliverables. During the retreat, that was our guiding document, and each minister will be given directive as to what KPIs they should be working towards. We should be getting that this week. We will review those directives internally and then sign up on a document that commits us as ministers to delivering on the KPI. So for the Ministry of Budget and National Planning and the Ministry of Finance, we'll have the responsibility of working with the Cabinet Secretariat to monitor the delivery of those KPIs that each minister has. We need to make sure that we stay on the path of the plan because the issues are many. So each ministry is supposed to take some 1, 2, 3 key focus and really launch on it. For example, in agriculture, we must concentrate on maybe 2, 3 value chains and push them to the point where the agriculture is not just production, but also processing, consumed products as well as even export.
All right, Honorable Minister, let's still remain with you because your comment is allowing us to have a broader aspect of this conversation. By the time we move into the nitty-gritty, we'll be touching some of those specifics that you have mentioned. Yes, many steps have been taken in the last administration on economic recovery growth plan, which of course seeks to primarily diversify the nation's economy. There are other areas you raised, agriculture, and of course human capital development. But these are capital, intensive priority areas that you have mentioned. Now, one wonders how the nation is going to grapple with the issue of revenue, of raising revenue, because of course many Nigerians are concerned about the rising debt profile of the country. So, what are the sources available, through which the nation can have raise the kind of funds that we require to, of course, to put into those areas you've mentioned? Okay,
let me step back a bit to say that the economy was really stressed to the extent that we went into recession, as reported by Leah in her presentation. But we have since then seen 8 consecutive quarters of growth, and it looks very much that this year, 2018, the GDP year close will be an improvement over the 1.9% of 2018. But we're very conscious of the fact that revenue is one of our biggest challenges. Of course, security is a huge challenge as well, but revenue is also a very significant challenge. When we designed the ERGP, the intention was to grow the economy by doing a lot of capital project works in areas of the economy that will increase consumption. And that was what helped us to pull out. But we also planned to build out the selected sectors using borrowing because revenues were low. Remember that there was a time that crude oil price was as low as $30 per barrel. So it was a conscious design that we will borrow in the first year, in the second year, and on an incremental basis. And by the 4th year, the borrowing will begin to decline. So if you look at the MTEF, which will soon release, and even the 2019, the borrowing level has reduced slightly. But when you look at the one that we're working on now, it is still further reduced. We have, if you look at just the budget, our debt to GDP, our debt to revenue ratio is a very healthy one. But because revenues are underperforming, to the extent that 2018 revenue closed at 55%, we're under a very significant fiscal strain. So the directive of Mr. President is we must increase revenue and we must continue to reduce costs. In January 2019, the Ministry of Finance launched a strategic revenue growth initiative, which was meant at enhancing the revenue generating capacity of the country, identifying new revenue streams, and ensuring that there's more cohesion in the work between all the revenue generating agencies. Our target is to move from that 55% to 85% over the next 3 years. When we do that, the borrowing that we have now at about 21% of GDP is still a very healthy one. So the problem is revenue. It is not that we have borrowed much or too much. It is that we don't have sufficient revenues. So all efforts are geared towards enhancing revenue. We identified clear initiatives and assigned those initiatives to specific revenue agencies with clear KPIs that must be delivered.
Why is it that we do not have enough revenues? And what can be done to ramp up the revenue base of the economy and of the country?
Well, we have to become more efficient in our revenue collection efforts as well as in enforcement. Our tax to GDP ratio is still the lowest amongst our comparators. At 7 to 8% of GDP, that is extremely low. The ERGP target was 15% by the year 2020. We're still at around 8%. So we have to increase taxes. We have to reduce the dependence on oil, even though that has started. But that has been achieved due to a combination of reasons. Oil price declines, so oil revenues are reduced. But also there has been some significant, steady increase in non-oil revenues. So we'll continue to work towards emphasizing increase in non-oil revenues, even as we try to still take advantage of revenues from the oil while we can, because oil is a commodity that will be fading away. So we have to maximize what we can from it as much as possible. So the oil sector also have directives of what they need to achieve.
I'm just wondering, Kirian, this is the debt issue is something that we'll return to because the Honorable Minister has given us perhaps a picture of the federal government's own debt stock. States also have their own indebtedness, and there are all kinds of obligations that are due going forward, and whether our revenues might be sufficient to meet those obligations when the call is made. But one issue, again, in terms of just broad-based philosophy of operating the economy, all our guests, and I'm sure we also had you over the course of the years on Good Morning Nigeria. What do you intend to do to ensure that there is a healthy and more effective and therefore efficient linkage involving fiscal, monetary, trade, and industrial policies?
Well, that is part of the targets that we have. We have been working closely with the monetary authorities, the Central Bank of Nigeria, but we have to even do more. Because as a consequence of the gap, you find the monetary authorities end up developing policies on even implementing some programs that ideally should have been done by the fiscal side. So we need to bridge that gap. And it may be because of not enough impetus from the fiscal side, that the monetary side is in some cases running faster than the fiscal. So we have to bridge that gap. And for me, we've been able to establish an excellent working relationship now with the Central Bank of Nigeria, and we will be working together to determine things that have to do with tariffs, that have to do with imports and exports, and also on the impact, indices that have impact on inflation in the country. We'll continue to do that so that we bridge the gap. The good story is that the foreign exchange rate has moderated for quite some time now, and there is some kind of stability that has been attained, but there's still a gap. And that gap is one of the targets that we will need to bridge and to narrow as much as possible. From 305 official rates to 360, there's still a gap that we need to bridge.
All right. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Of course, we'll now have a good backgrounding to this conversation, coming from the Minister of Finance, Budgeting and Planning. Now, let's come to Professor Kenife. Professor Kenife, you must have been monitoring the nation's economic trajectory over the years. We recall when we had structural adjustment program, which was, of course, what many Nigerians felt didn't have a human face, as it were, during that period. But we've also passed through other economic, policies of the previous administrations. Now, you listen to the Honorable Minister. We're talking about rising debt profile, we're talking about poor revenue base and what have you. So what do you make of the priority areas that the Minister has mentioned, vis-a-vis the possibility of the administration presently being able to manage a good economy?
Well, let me begin by congratulating the Minister on her appointment and the expansion of her portfolio. But I have to say that there are things that the Honourable Minister has said that are music to my ear. One, a tighter and more timely coordination between fiscal policy and monetary policy. She's pointed that out, and that has been a major item for consideration. Then, of course, she also talked about the review of the monitoring and evaluation that was done on the ARGP, but from the perspective of the households, which is not a bad idea. In fact, actually, nearly 80% of our GDP is on consumption. So it is right that they began from there. But it's by no means the only way out. I'm going to have to come to that. Then there's also the recognition of all this, she's on course. But let me begin by pointing out some fundamental weaknesses that we need to sit on top of, so that as we look at strategic opportunities which we have to lock down, it will be done in the context of what we think is the missing link. For example, our unemployment rate is many times more than the urbanization rate. When the unemployment rate is in the 20s, and one minister said it might even come to 30 in the next few years, then it means that urbanization rate is 4.66%. And urbanization rate is higher than the population growth rate, which is 3.2%. And then that in itself is greater than the GDP growth rate, which is around 2%. And the agricultural GDP is even less. Now, that brings a vivid picture of the so-called time bomb, demographic time bomb. So you can see that.
Just go over that again. Okay.
What I'm saying is that the demographic time bomb we expect by 2030 is not even going to wait till 2030. We are looking at a population explosion, but the trajectory is that the unemployment rate is many times more than urbanization rate. Urbanization rate is 4.6%. Urbanization rate is higher than the population growth rate, which is 3.2%. What it means is that in the next few years, the population concentrating in the center will go from 50% to 75%. And then you have young people dominating there with no job. And then you come and have a population growth rate that is higher than the GDP growth rate, which means the poverty is going to continue to increase. And the agriculture, which is the core, which we're going to come to, is even growing lower than the GDP and all that rate. So it portends serious consideration. But there are opportunities. There are opportunities because when you have this China, US, global, has it got an opportunity for Nigeria? Of course, there's a huge opportunity for Nigeria to capitalize. You look at ECOWAS people coming in and saying Nigeria has to lead and become the banker of a new ECOWAS currency. That has massive economic implication. And it's good, but we will have to see how you lock it in. You look at AFCTA that has been signed. I like the way that it was delayed so that the president gets the message. And the president has got the message and he is leading from the front. But we need to capture that. So when you're going to look at a new revision of our ERGP, which is the operative plan that we have, it's a short-term plan, and we also need to find a way of bringing in a medium-term plan as well, because the 2020 medium-term is gone. So now when you have to lock it down, you look at national planning. National planning, I'm trying to encourage them to look at bioeconomy as a new economy that has to be put into the EIGP plan. That could give us $50 billion in the next 5 years.
What's bioeconomy?
And I'll come that, because under bioeconomy, you have bioenergy, biotechnology, biomedical, you have green economy, green, all of them. And they're all economies that are burgeoning, that are based on our natural economy, that will actually transform and remove the emphasis just on agriculture. That is huge. Then you come to the National Assembly relationship with budget. I said, look, even though the administration has control of the two houses, don't forget what is the key contention between these two arms. Over the years, since 1999, they believe that they have a role to play in budgeting. Let us do participatory budgeting. Let's not take it for granted, because they've caused us so much damage. 4 years of seven months delay in budget affects consumption. Consumption is a huge proportion of our GDP. So let's keep that alignment tight. Make sure that the FSP, the fiscal strategy paper, is ready in June, July, and MTEF, and then deliver the budget in October, so that we can now go and ask the manager, the president of the Senate, deliver us our budget on January the 1st. So the economy returns in sync with the private sector spending. So we have this economy, we will give it the best that we can. And then also, the minister mentioned some agricultural value chain. Now, this is where the president has come out and is leading from the front. Apart from what the EIGP contains in terms of actions on that, the president says to the CBN, focus on 10 value chains. And so let's have the fiscal policy run at the same time with the monetary policy, because if you see, the monetary policy is on the driving seat on those 10 value chains. Funding end-to-end intervention, from land clearing, land development, seed production, all the input, all the way to market. And also smuggling and dumping. CBN is getting involved in that. Fiscal policy must come through immediately, so that they are all working together in addressing those. So whatever is done here has implications. Even safeguard measures may be invoked, even levy instruments may be invoked. All the punitive and action have to be seen to be coming from both authorities.
Okay, Professor Kenife, thank you very much. Now, let's bring in Professor Nazifi Dama. Professor Nazifi Dama, look, the floor is open, as it were, for you to make your comments on what you think the priority issues should be for the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and Planning. But I would like you to preface your comments with your regular talk about planning and planning and planning. You're an advocate of planning, and indeed you were a director in national planning. First, structurally, how do you see the merger, as it were again, of budget and national planning with finance, unlike when it was segregated 4 years ago?
Okay, thank you very much. You see, I have been, I am, and I will continue to be an advocate of long-term and medium-term national development planning culture. Because as a developing economy, competing with other emerging economies, the only way we can structurally orient our economy to be competitive is for us to have or revert back to the culture of planning. Because planning enables you to set your priorities sector by sector and then cost those priorities on a long-term basis and horizon, and isolate those developmental interventions that can be comfortably provided by the state and those that can be provided by the private sector. And our economy is a federating economy with 3 tiers of government. And I keep on saying, if the federal government achieve 100% excellence in terms of policy prioritization and planning, if the states and local governments are not carried along, then certainly there is a problem. And we have institutional mechanisms in the country that can provide a basis for such coordination, particularly the monthly meetings of National Economic Council and then the National Council on Economic Development, which is done quarterly. And you remember recently, as a member of the Board of Economists of Daily Trust, we had our usual meeting on a quarterly basis and we reviewed the economy. And one of the key issues we emphasized there is to be able to assert the independence of National Planning Commission as an agency established by law to provide overall coordinated framework of all developmental interventions, projects and programs. One, alignment of policies and programs. Two, development of medium-term and long-term plan, and possibly take the Vision 2020 Economic Transformation Blueprint, which I am privileged to be part of, review it in a holistic manner, incorporate the Sustainable Development Goals and every other governmental policy program that we need to focus, so that let us have a 10-year minimal of long-term national development plan, and then break it down into a 5-year medium-term plan, just like we have the first, second, third, and fourth national development plan. And I'm sure the minister will agree with me and a lot of Nigerians that the golden years of Nigeria's achievement of sustainable development are those years when we have been implementing the medium-term 5-year plan after independence until it was truncated in 1985. So I think it's an opportunity to talk directly with the Honorable Minister, and I'm sure she is a listening person, and I think we can work together to make this happen, because certainly the delays that often do happen at National Assembly is a manifestation of a problem. And that problem is because, as Ken Epe said, we don't have a participatory budget, we don't have a participatory planning culture. The reason why a lot of delay is experienced in the National Assembly is because members of the House of Representatives and Senate will want to incorporate projects that touch on the lives of their constituents and their representatives, and they are right. Now, if we have a medium-term national development planning culture, we could be able to incorporate literally every single local government need and want and prioritize it, so that at the end of the day, when budget is submitted in September or October, the only thing that will happen are two: possible buy-in because of inflationary pressures arising from the earlier costed program, and possible buy-in because of exchange rate variation, and maybe to have reports from various ministries of the extent of implementation, so that within a space of 60-90 days, the National Assembly can pass the budget, because the budget will then be an extraction from an already developed and costed 5-year national development plan, and that will solve a lot of energy, so that the National Assembly can concentrate its energy on providing institutional strengthening of existing institutions that are weak for the purpose of good governance, fighting corruption, expanding the scope of the economy. Number two, an economy is a function of what is done by its managers, either to remain static or to expand or to depreciate. Nigerian economy is controlled mainly by three institutions at governmental level: the federal government, the state, and local government. Now, I hope and pray with the coming of the second term of Mr. President, the one-day meeting that we usually have of National Economic Council honestly is inadequate. Let us have like 2-3 days, holistically discuss how can we expand the economic capacity to produce more and provide a basis of generating taxes, because our tax to GDP ratio is one of the lowest among emerging economies, and that is not sustainable. With the rising debt profile, we are spending so much money on debt service, and averagely 66 naira for every $1, 66 naira for every 100 naira we earn. That is not sustainable. Of course, the debt to GDP ratio is low, but the debt to earnings is extremely high. So we need to have realistic conversations around that. We also need to have realistic conversation about the costing of capital project in Nigeria at federal and other levels. Believe me sincerely, you cannot be able to attract the needed resources for public-private partnership. And that brings me to an issue. Our public-private partnership policy needs to be completely overhauled, because an investor is not interested in our faces or color. He is interested in where his investment will give him the highest return, but importantly, there are specific safeguards in the law to make sure that his investment is secured. We have extreme weaknesses in the public-private partnership law and policy. And I have said it, I am saying it, and I will continue to say it. Our economy, even if we are selling oil at $300 per barrel, cannot be able to provide the needed resources to fill the infrastructure gap that is over 3 trillion US dollars. So we need to have realistic conversation. How do we review the PPP policy? How do we review the law? How do we attract sovereign wealth funds that are especially in the Middle East? Sub-Saharan Africa, and Nigeria in particular, is a potential source of growth in the next 20, 30 years. But it all depends on how we are able to craft policies and programs in order to attract resources. Nobody in the world will joke with an economy of 200 million people with high level of consumption. We are a strategic country in the whole of Africa. And that is why there is likely to continue to be attraction from the Chinese, from the Europeans, from the Americans. But our level of attraction should be that can be able to bring productive foreign direct investment into productive areas of the economy. Venture capital foreign direct investment, we don't need it. What we need is foreign direct investment in agriculture, in industry. But you cannot be able to attract those until you have an alignment between the right policies, the PPP policy, a national plan, because it gives the country an element of predictability, macroeconomic sustainability, and proper direction, so that anybody that is relating with us will have a compendium of policies and programs that gives him an assurance that this is a country that is ready to go to the next level.
Yeah, well, thank you, Professor Dama. You've really made a very key point. I mean, going by your postulations and that of Professor Ken. And I want to draw a line from your comments, and that has to do with the issue of a budget cycle in Nigeria. We wonder, many Nigerians wonder why, since 1999, the nation has not been able to get it right when it comes to budgeting. And that also brings in the issue of members of the National Assembly, who would want to be to participate in the budgeting and planning. Those who may wish to, have some projects of their constituents, taken care of and all of that. When we also know that in their constituency or their constituencies, we also have local government authority, we have a state government as well. And well, I'd like to bring in the minister here. Honorable Minister, you've heard about this issue of budget, and it is affecting the entire policy or fiscal, monetary, and whatever, or what have you, because the bottom line is that after budgeting, there should be implementation of the budget, and of course the result is a democracy dividend. Now, you now have under you planning, budgeting, and of course finance. How are you going to ensure that from now onwards that there will not be any bottlenecks or any kind of problems between the executive and the National Assembly with respect to returning Nigeria to the normal and not abnormal budget cycle?
Okay, so let me say that in the last dispensation, we tried to bring back the budgeting process to the January-December calendar. So it's not for want of trying. But we didn't have an assembly that was helpful. They were not cooperative enough. Yes, there were some delays, but if you submit a budget in October and it doesn't come back to you till about 6-7 months after, that is a problem. So we have now an assembly that is very, very helpful and very sympathetic, and we have agreed that we will complete the budget process and submit to the assembly by the last week of September. And we're working towards that. The MTEF process is well advanced. We had taken the MTEF for consultation to the last Thursday. We're working towards maybe the first FAC that will hold to take it to the Federal Executive Council, and then the MTF FSP will be taken to the National Assembly. So we're trying to bring that back on course because we recognize that even though government budget is just barely 10% of the GDP of the economy, but it acts as a very important trigger. So it affects what the private sector does as well. So we also have to incorporate, and we're trying to work towards preparing the budget on a consultative basis so that we're engaging the leadership of the National Assembly. We've tried to do that, but the consultation still, because there wasn't much cooperation, still didn't yield the desired results. So, but we will be more and then we'll step down the consultation between from the highest level to maybe the chairs of the committees. In fact, that's what the National Assembly also advised, so that we get their inputs. But if you look at our national budget, you'll find that we usually provide a block amount that is meant for constituency projects on the service-wide board. If you look at it for the past 3 years consecutively, 100 billion is provided. That is meant for the National Assembly members to decide as they will what projects they provide to their constituents at their own level. But during the budget preparation processes, we've also seen in the last dispensation an increasing trend of an increasing trend that sees a lot of projects coming into the budgets as prepared by MDAs. And if it was there was some surplus that was available to do that, it's not a problem. But it meant scaling down on key government projects to provide resources. To the credit of the National Assembly, they have not been going so much out of the MTF framework, except in the first 2 years where there was an opportunity to increase the crude oil price. But in the last 2019 budget, that opportunity wasn't even there because we all were conscious of the fact that the price was just too precarious to do that. So we still need to be sure that we bring in the National Assembly and get their projects even into the MDA's budgets during the budget preparation process so that we remain contained within the framework and we don't have, and it will save in terms of the time that the Assembly takes to review the budgets and prepare it for all of the necessary approvals.
Yeah, it's often said that getting the appropriation bill passed into an act is one thing. Budgetary releases to the MDAs are also a major headache. Why have we tended to contend with this issue and not overcome it? A number of MDAs can hardly boast of getting up to 60% of their budgetary releases. Those who get above 60 would know that it's a big story for them.
Well, short answer is revenue shortfalls. When you have been able to attain only 55% of your revenue, your capacity to implement the budget is greatly affected. But to be fair, implementation of the budget and the plans has greatly improved, to the extent that we used to sit down between finance and budget and planning to look at government priorities, knowing that the funding is tight, selecting priority projects to be funded. So in the past, it used to be quarterly releases. You just release money to MDAs. But for the past 3 years, we release funds for projects. So we ask the MDA, what are your priority projects? And the minister is supposed to sign on that to make sure we're staying within the priorities. They send it to review, and then release is project specific. And there was also emphasis on infrastructure ministries. They would always, for the past 3-4 years, they were getting the highest proportion of releases. They had the highest budget, but they were also getting the highest proportion of releases. Agriculture also was very much getting a lot of attention, so is mining. But security continues to be important. Unfortunately, we still have pockets of challenges, so security also was important. The health and education sector, if you look at the trend also over the past 4 years, the releases have been on the improve. We got to a point when we identified, because of the revenue shortfalls, and we are not able to provide the operational funding every month, 12 months in a year, we identify some agencies that must get those funds. We call them critical agencies, and they include security and a few other agencies that we determine is vital that they must get that their monthly. So those ones get consistently 1/12 of their budget every month, and then the other MDAs in the last year were able to do 7 months. The year before that, 7 months, something like that. So as revenue improves, we also try to do that. Capital funding has always been by borrowing. So the funds that we borrow is channeled towards funding capital.
Yeah, the other issue, very important one, raised by our two guests here, one of course Professor Nazifi, has to do with long-term planning. ARGP will be rounded off by 2020, which is next year. Will the government contemplate a longer national development plan, so 5 years or 10 years, as advocated by?
We have to do a new plan. The Vision 2020 expires at 2020, so is the ERGP as well. So it's clear to us that we have to do a plan. So the moment we rest the budget with the National Assembly, the next major task for the ministry will be the starting the process of a medium to long-term plan. During the consultative process, we'll agree as to what should be the period, but I like the idea of it being 10 years and broken down into 5 years. There has not been a time in the recent past when implementation of a plan has been vigorous. The ERGP was not a new plan. We reviewed the Vision 2020, we reviewed the Nigerian Infrastructure Master Plan, we incorporated the SDGs. In fact, we had an SDG check. All the 17 SDGs were taken into account, the needs assessment, and a number of sectoral plans that were in place. So we extracted from those and pulled them into the ERGP. And there was a strong implementation process underpinning the ERGP. We had the ERGP implementation unit that just concentrated on tracking the performance of the ERGP in the key sectors, and we want to be able to continue with that and even enhance it.
All right, Minister, thank you very much indeed. Let me return to Professor Kenife. You want to make a comment on what she said, or what, do I give you
react to what she said? Although the two things I really want to bring out is the mileage in closer and tighter fiscal and monetary policy interaction, and also react on the debt management. But I need to clarify the issue of the Assembly. I'm not a spokesman for the National Assembly, but I've talked to them. In many years, I've been interacting in this. I said to them, what is your problem? Their problems are, one, oversight function, and what that means when budget arrives to them. And we said, okay, I talked to national planning a lot. I said, give them quarterly review of the budget so that they have 3 reviews before your final budget arrives. And they only talk about so reduce what the interaction is at the point of budget delivery. And then I said, but you've got that report. Why are you not doing oversight? They said the money released. They're not releasing money for them to do the oversight. I said, okay, keep quiet. Now let's go to the next one. They talk about participatory budgeting. It's good that some money is being made available in the service-wide vote. But it has its purpose, but it's not enough. It doesn't answer the whole issue about participatory budgeting from their point of view. There is Senate and National Assembly, what's the Parliament, the other one, Senate and House of Assembly. They have a committee on literally every MDA. And that should be the point of entry. If their committees are in everywhere, why are those committees not interacting with you when it comes to budget selection and budget uplift? Why are they not interacting? So what you do is that you create some money, and then it's winner takes all, and then they said, okay, we'll wait for you. When your budget comes, they will lay ambush. Yeah. So you now find that when you now have a budget that they should have 3 months to consider, they're preoccupied on budget defense, is dagger drawn. If they can't find a headway, they will raise the threshold and have more money on the budget and allocate. That is what we need to nip in the bud. Don't take them for granted. Because APC has majority, don't take them for granted, because if there's anything that we have learned from National Assembly, they don't want you to call them rubber stamp. They want to be involved ab initio. Now, let's return to the key thing that I was looking for. If you notice in 2016, when there was a complete meltdown in our economy, the CBN had to face the unfaceable. They tried so many measures, macroprudential measures, they try capital account control, you saw the limitations. It's only when they turned to demand management that there was traction. So for their revenue dropping from 3.2 billion a month to 1 billion against a 4.66 billion request for Forex, they had to turn there. And I was saying to the Ministry of Finance then, not you, where is your support? Trade, industry. None of those policies were coming to aid. So we had, the difference is eventually when Madam came in, there was traction. Because I can see the fiscal policy for 2018-19 was responsive. It now begin to draw nearer to the 43 item now. But now, there's more that needs to be done. Even with the focus of the president on 10 presidential value chains, now you could see that CBN is working hard and then attacking it in a way that hasn't been seen before. We need fiscal to begin to come close. And I don't know whether minister may want to consider having a fiscal committee at some stage that meets maybe once in 3 months or once a year, so that there is coherence at that level and they are working together. I wouldn't even be surprised if at one point they may want to have a joint meeting between the fiscal committee and the bank monetary committee once, just to make sure that there's tighter alignment. But the impact of that is, now if you look at what CBN is trying to do, it came and opened the window, the CRR, that is cash reserve ratio window, opening 4 trillion naira to commercial banks to say, come and take this. This money is sitting with me, any zero interest. But the banks are not jumping up and down as we would expect to go and take that money, 8-9% interest at a longer term, 7 years and 1 year moratorium. I can see them jumping up and down to come and take money that is any zero, their own money.
That has always been a problem.
I know,
yes,
but
why?
No, I want to tell you, I'll tell you what is missing.
Yes.
What is their alternative? They're going for treasury bills because they have no risk with treasury bills, and then they just go and offload the treasury. And when they go there and dump the money, they're crowding out private sector investment. Then the bank is also trying to do something about. CBN was trying to see how can I discourage these people from going to treasury bill. So they increased the loan to deposit ratio, LDR, to no less than 60%. But you can see, they already 22.5% is locked down on CRR. You have 60% you must lend to capital. And even CBN tried to incentivize them by if we hedge more to capital, you get 1.5% uplift. That is 150% uplift. But fiscal policy has to come down. Connect, because when the banks are running away from the risk involved in capital lending, fiscal policy should move in and look at how they incentivize capital-based lending. And then the risk that side for the bank so that they can move their money. So, you know, that's the... Then on the debt management and also the debt... It is true, I agree with the minister. Our problem, we have a very large headroom on external borrowing, without a doubt. The real problem is revenue strategy, that the revenue is failing. So when you come to the amount required to service the debt, is nearly 40% of the revenue, and the revenue is dropping. And what I say to the minister is this. Over the last 11 years, only 1.4 trillion naira has been collected from 122 MDAs. And you know, one of the good things that this administration did when they came in 2015 was they went heavily on TSA. And that started rolling in over 2 trillion. And nobody complains now because everybody likes that it is bringing in money. But this is the area that we need to focus on. Now, according to the law, the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and there's a Fiscal Responsibility Commission, 80% of the operating surplus of these 122 MDA ought to be into the account of the government. And then they play with 20%. And then later they reconcile in the end of the accounting cycle. If we get this tight, get this tight, it will reduce the amount of borrowing that we need to make, and then it will bring revenue.
Professor Kenife Kyrian, I don't know. You know, you're talking about operating surplus. I hope you're also aware that a number of MDs also complain that they have virtually nothing else left to finance or fund their operations because the TSA swallows up virtually everything.
I think we're not matching like to like. The thing is, the TSA is what you have paid into the coffers. Yes. We're talking about what has not been paid.
Okay. But nobody pays
on a month-to-month basis. Let me tell you what happens in the current situation. What happens is that an MDA is business as usual. End of the year, they create 2 accounts. One account is to fulfill the righteousness to the FRC, and another one to the auditor. And the 2 accounts don't talk to each other. But we're talking about month by month. That money should go in month by month. And not leave it, and they said the minister said this, minister said that, another minister, and spend all the money.
What is interesting here is the fact that, we've come a long way as a nation in terms of planning, budgeting, implementation, and what have you. But at the end of the day, we discover that, look, nothing is really working the way that we expect it to do. Kenny Fair, in his, before this, his comment, he talked about bioeconomy, biotech, and bio-others. And I want to come to Professor Dama before we go on break, so that I don't lose my line of thought, that where is the role of science, technology, and innovation in all of this? All the sectoral plans, all the things that you have said here all are driven by science, technology, and innovation. Correct. In Indonesia, I saw palm oil being refined into biofuel used in driving cars. And if you look at the Asian tigers, who are emerging, in fact, most of them are now developed, like Singapore, right? What did they do that we're not doing? All this issue of planning, budgeting, fiscal, monetary policies, and what have you, have not been translated into practical reality, that will change the course of our economic history. So, I mean, most of people watching us this morning may not even understand the terminologies that you professionals are using to even understand what we're saying. Yeah, but let's bring it down and see how we can do it as Asian tigers did.
You didn't add your regular satellite.
Before I respond to this comment, I want to appeal to the minister passionately about one thing. Participatory planning and budgeting in a democratic culture is very important. I was privileged to be in the Indian Planning Commission in 2011. For the last 8 years, India has been consistent with National Development Plan of 5 years. And usually, the culture there is that they usually have a medium-term review after the second year. By the third year, the Indian Planning Commission will initiate a process for the development of the next plan and is participatory to the lowest 600,000 counties in India. That is why the process takes a whole 2 years. They incorporate literally every need and then prioritize in a consultative manner. If we do that, the issue of allocating special money for constituency projects, we will eliminate it because we will incorporate every single constituency project or program desirous by the members of House of Reps and Senate, and we have a clean and smooth process and implementation. That is that. Now, secondly, your issue about innovation, it is extremely important. And let me give you an analogy to tell you, maybe to trigger an action on the part of the federal government. I was privileged to be at a program organized by Harvard University in Nigeria, together with Babatunde Fashola and some of his permanent secretaries and the existing governor of Lagos and his deputy. After the program, based on the role that science and technology has proved in terms of promoting entrepreneurship and innovation, particularly in Latin America, Fashola decided to constitute a committee of 12, and I was a member. And he called it Lagos Innovation Policy Advisory Council. We set off the policy framework, we agree on it, and he gave us money. And we identify 5 key areas of innovation that anybody in Lagos, whether he is a Lagosian or he is a non-Lagosian, provided he is living in Lagos, if he has any innovative idea that can transform Lagos in those 5 key areas, he will come and make presentation to us. From the money provided, we can give him grant from 1 to 5 million naira. And I heard that there is some element of move on the part of Ministry of Science and Technology to develop the innovation policy. And I was also now to be privileged and be working with the Tertiary Education Trust Fund and the National Universities Commission. They are also having like a collaborative effort toward promoting science, innovation, research and development, particularly in the universities, polytechnics and colleges of education, because for a long period of time, this country has not even talked about what we call the triple helix model. And that model is a model of collaboration between the government, the private sector, and the research institutions. So that if you go to most of the emerging economies, the research is demand-driven. If you undertake a demand-driven research, it can automatically be uptaken by a business enterprise, transform into a service or product, and that can be marketed. And that goes a long way in strengthening the capacity of the research institutions, polytechnics, universities, colleges of education, and then the government provide like a coordinated role and filling in the gap. And that way, it is possible for us to transform this economy and combat a lot of what we see as non-combatable into money.
Professor Dama, you've spoken so well, but on the policy aspect, I'm not asking a question right now, but I'm just to...
we don't have a policy. Let me preempt.
For instance, now, the automobile industry, for instance.
Yeah.
In Asian tiger countries, you cannot have a brand of car that does not have a factory in that country.
Okay.
But in Nigeria, I'm not sure we have the data of the brands that we have in Nigeria when it comes to automobile. But we don't even have assembly plants in the first place. But it is compulsory in China for you to sell your car. You have to have a factory because that will, allow the younger generation of Chinese people to learn that industry. So let's stop there when we return.
Yeah, Professor Nazif Idama and the other guest, Honorable Minister, thank you very much. The President is in Yokohama, Japan. You can be sure that the number of Toyota SUVs you have in Nigeria, you can't find them in Japan.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's take a short break now. When we return, we'll continue with the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Please, did you hear that?
Of course I did. That is Village Elmaster tune.
So, Auntie Amebo was not gossiping then?
Village Elmaster is celebrating 50 years.
50? Already? This is not a joke.
It is a national celebration. NTA and Village Elmaster family are commemorating 50 years.
Hey, please, tell me, when is our Golden Jubilee?
It is from the 8th to 11th of October, 2019.
I have to go and get ready. It's time to party.
Women. But we, men, will be there too.
Please.
Hold it! Me, I don't cover my hand from oil bunkering.
General, what you going to yarn? What did the yarn say? I don't understand though.
Because they spoil our water and our environment. And they cause our people serious harm. Militants is there. You know who. Me, I not do again Sam.
Because why? Change begins with me.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We still have all our three guests, Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Professors Ken Ife and Nazif Idama. We also have contributions from our viewers who have used our Twitter handle. You can see it on the screen there at NTA GML. Let's take those tweets now, Kirian. Akeju Olagbaju has this first tweet. The agenda for the Ministry of Finance should be to negotiate for reduction in bilateral and multilateral debts to help reduce the amount for debt servicing and increase capital expenditure and fund only priority projects that have multiplier effect.
All right, from Adekunle Olayemi, stability of our economy should be the priority in this tenure. and there must be controlled price in almost all goods being sold in the market. The exchange rate should be controlled properly, promoting local producers of goods and local farmers.
Abdul tweets, now the Honorable Minister should also ensure the evolution of development plans for the nation, as was the case in the past, and ensure implementation of such plans to the letter.
Now from Titus Monday York, he said, please, the minister should assist wherever possible to advise whosoever for the implementation of the minimum wage. Nigerian workers are suffering and living below the minimum living wage index. Please, Madam Minister, liaise with your colleagues, to implement this.
Okay, Sonny Michael Amakoji, the agenda of this administration from inception has been on economy, security, and infrastructure. Perhaps our yearning hasn't changed either, as we want to see improvement in all areas mentioned, particularly with good economic policies that will stabilize our exchange rate.
Now, from Olabaju Akeju Olabaju, there are leakages in our revenue drive. There are many agencies generating revenue and still keeping it undeclared. There are overseas investments that are generating revenue, also within the MTEF. I am sure if most of the leakages are plugged, deficit will be reduced.
All right, Kyria, those are the tweets that we have in the meantime. Let's return to the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning. Just while we were off camera, an issue came up, of course, triggered by what Kyrian had said, with regard to the fact that in some countries you go, there are no Tokumbo vehicles. You can have pre-owned within the economy, but not the kind of flood of Tokumbo vehicles that we have in Nigeria, which leads us to a much bigger issue. Professor Kenife also whispered on that. What could possibly be the game changer in the way our economy runs? Because everything from purchases, financing of housing, and so on and so forth, people will complain that you hardly have mortgages. Mortgages are of such a short term that virtually, it is dead. So can we transition from a debt economy to a credit economy? Debt economy being, for the benefit of our viewers, cash and carry. I want to buy a car is worth, let's say, 10 million. If I don't have 10 million, I don't go to the showroom. Can we return to a credit system? In the past, there used to be hire purchase agreements or hire purchase systems that were operational. When you had bidding societies, you could also have reasonable mortgages. But because all your cash has to be in your pocket, it's quite a strain. Can we have a game changer in the financing of our economic transactions?
Well, thank you very much. We must build a process that enhances consumer credit, both for the purpose of acquisition of assets like vehicles, but also most importantly for us, homes. We have had an automobile policy. The implementation has been on for over 5 years, but it's not worked. Why? Because there's no demand. Because there's no demand, you will not find any good automobile company coming to set up in Nigeria. There has to be a demand, and the demand can be triggered by easing access to financing so that you can go into a store and buy a vehicle, pay a percentage, and then the rest of it is covered by a financing facility, and that you'll be able to uptake a house without having to pay for the house or build the house from scratch yourself. Part of the priorities, the 11 priorities that we came out of in the retreat, is creating affordable housing, as well as putting in place a very good consumer credit system. So the fiscal authorities have to work with the monetary authorities to make sure that happens and it's in place. One other thing, should I respond to the questions that are raised from the Twitter handle on the debt? Recommending that we go and negotiate and get their discount, yes, that could be so. But for us, instead of going about borrowing, begging for debtors to reduce our debt, what we should do is to work internally to enhance our revenue potential capacity, not just by government, but by the whole of the economy. We have to become competitive. We have opportunities in the AFCFTA, But the AFCFTA is also a challenge if we are not able to quickly put in place policies and programs that will make our economy competitive. We will find our businesses being increasingly fizzled away by our neighboring countries. Also, the eco currency that is being introduced will also be an opportunity as well as a challenge. So we need to do more in terms of remaining competitive. On the minimum wage, the federal government is implementing the minimum wage from August. But that is just the minimum wage. We're in the process of negotiating with labor on the consequential adjustment that needs to be put in place for the rest of the service. So the workers that are on minimum wage on the federal government payroll, they're actually very few. They're very, very few because a lot of services that will have been in that category have already been outsourced. So when we finish that negotiation, the consequential adjustment will also be applied. The states is a different ballgame. Each state has to negotiate with its labor on how they will implement this. We will continue to encourage the state to at least implement the minimum wage first and then negotiate the consequential adjustment for implementation. On revenue leakages, in the SRGI that we launched in January, we have a number of projects that are targeted at blocking revenue leakages. One of the things for us is also enhancing the implementation of the TSA. We have more revenues that we can see, but our liquidity management is still not optimal. So we're looking at refining the implementation of the TSA to make us take the most advantage of that pool of resources. So you see the funds, but you don't really have access to eat all the time. I launched just before, a month before the last administration, a project that we call Project Lighthouse. It's an automated platform that is meant to pull data as well as enable us to do data analytics. What that is going to do to us is being able to track the performance of revenue on near real-time basis, as well as identify taxpayers, whether it's an individual or a corporate, by using data from different sources. So we have data pull from not just the TSA, but BVN, immigration, customs, FRS, all of it pulled together. So it enables us to do analytics and helps us to plan better and also enhances our liquidity management.
All right, Professor Kane, please, very briefly, what do you know about the currency swap deal, with China? And I also wanted to speak to the issue of the planned Africa free trade, and all that. So what should that portend the Nigerian economy?
You see, the currency swap is an opportunity, both for us importing and for them in China exporting, and vice versa. What it does is that it reduces the the premium that people would have to pay because you are going via dollar, or vice versa. The people quoting for you to import from China, they will add 10% because they don't know what the currency rate would be when the time they own your LC matures. So they increase. So the fact about 20% is saved on both sides just because we are having a swap. But I think we need to take it to the next level. China is under enormous pressure right now that the tariff has gone up 10, 15%, 25%, and it's even going to go to 30%. And they have responded in kind last week to America. So let us take the opportunity that China presents right now. And I kept saying, I said, let's take a bold, mega $100 billion project to China and say, come and work with us. We're not borrowing the money. Bring this money into our export freezer. We have 34 of them. Let your people come and manufacture them here. We'll guarantee you 40%. And then, of course, the whole of Africa is now open because we are members, part of ECOWAS. But from here, you can re-export to America under AGOA. Zero tariff, zero trade. It's music for their ears.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Professor Kenneth. I'm sorry to jump in here. I mean, we keep talking about export processing zones. The example you just cited, get China to bring in 100 billion or 100 million. Is it not possible for the Nigerian government to also get China or whoever, the funds that, sovereign wealth funds that Professor Nazifi talked about, come and build 4 or 5 refineries in Nigeria?
There's no question about that. In fact, even telling the, why don't you say to the who is not here, Mobile, all the big oil majors are here. Why don't we say, okay, 5 of you, take 5 of the refineries, one. They will never allow it to fail because there's reputational damage. They are here for the long run. They will deliver those. But we've also tinkered with co-location of refinery with new one. And where is that? Then you have 75 licenses to oil people. And these people need only $100 million for a modular refinery to refine 20,000 barrels. But they can find that, but we can find the huge money we spend on fuel subsidy. So there are mismatches there. There are mismatches, but we can go to the bottom of those. But I want to finish, please, by looking at this consumer credit, because consumer is king. When I went to UK in 1981, I saw it in action with Mrs. Thatcher. Consumer is king. Why is the ICT the biggest one here, not harassing us, not being a nuisance on our credit system? Because we are financing the ICT by credit. When you are buying their credit card, buying it, you are giving them credit. So they have more money than they need. And so they are not a nuisance to our financial system. In the same way, turn it to flip it over. If we have 17 licenses granted for car assembly and are struggling, it's because they can't see how they're going to sell the first 100,000 cars that they will make. They will sell first year, how they're going to sell second year. We have to have this consumer credit. And let's look away from the commercial banks, for goodness sake, and have independent lease financing and mortgage financing and hire purchase financing come in. Many Nigerians that have money abroad can actually bring it in if they have license to do lease purchase. Okay, explain to me, if the diaspora can bring $23 billion every year in this country, and you tell me as a diaspora sending in my money that I can put some of that in lease financing and if they give me license, you're talking about a different economy. I'm telling you that the case is made.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you continue to talk about restrictive trade when you need to unlock the potential in the economy.
All right, Professor Nazifi, your thoughts briefly also on how we can possibly have a game changer with regard to financing consumption in Nigeria. Debt financing for our consumption, which is cash and carry, is virtually not taking us anywhere. How can we move on to the credit side?
Well, you know, the reality is that if you look at the structure of the economy can only provide what its capacity dictates. Now, we need to expand the frontiers of developing a policy framework to attract, just like Professor Kenife said, as much as possible money from diasporans. But the framework should be all-encompassing, transparent, result-oriented, and value-adding. And you see, consumer credit, as we keep on talking, is a two-sided issue. One, you have to create the demand, but at the same time, you also have to create the supply. But in creating the supply, especially, we need to look at national interest. It's not just about allowing people to import cars, but making sure that everyone that is interested establish an assembly plant that is in line with the presidential order on domesticating and promoting local content development. All other countries are doing something similar, so we have to first look at our national interests and trench it. But importantly also, the way we are financing capital projects, I want to appeal to the Honorable Minister to see how she can put on experts. Let us have a realistic discussion. We need infrastructure, but financing infrastructure using debt is not sustainable.
Okay, Professor Dema,
it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable. So we need to use public-private partnership. And finally, please, let us have a comprehensive audit of all abandoned government projects and see which of those can be financed using public resources and which can be financed by the private sector. So that at the end of the day, it will serve a basis of re-reflating the economy.
Thank you, Professor Dama. Let's now bring in the Honorable Minister, your final thoughts.
Well, just to say that Nigerians should be comforted with the fact that President Buhari has a second term and that his focus is still on growing the economy, on enhancing security and welfare of the citizens, as well as fighting corruption. So in all of these discussions, we have not talked about fighting corruption, and it features in so many different, in almost every area. So we need to continue to fight corruption, not just by enforcement, but by prevention. And to prevent corruption, we have to increasingly use innovation and use technology so that even when you do a malfeasance, it is traceable. For example, in the budget process, we automated the process of preparing budgets. So if anybody does anything on the system, it's traceable. You can track, there's an audit trail of who has done what, and that has greatly reduced from the side of the executive the propensity to tinker with budget. So we will continue to work towards achieving the priorities that have been defined in the last retreat, and each minister will have targets that will be monitored and reported on, and there will be consequences. The president assured us that there will be consequences for non-performance. We also call on Nigerians to support the president in monitoring the performance of ministers.
All right. Okay. Well, this is where we are concluding this edition of Good Morning Nigeria. But first of all, let's appreciate guests this morning. Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed. It's been wonderful talking to you this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right. And Professor Ken Efe is a developmental economist. Well, he's a regular face here whenever we're talking economy.
Thank you.
You brought in some postulations that may be difficult to practice here from all indications unless something else happens. Thank you for coming. And Professor Nazifi Dama is a professor of economics at the University of Abuja. Thank you, sir, for your wonderful insights to the program today.
Thank you very much, and may Allah bless Nigeria and give it lasting peace.
All right, so on that note, we would like to thank you for tuning in. Good Morning Nigeria returns tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, do enjoy the rest of your day. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Kyrian. Have a great day.